So here he thought, wow, we're alike. But hey, there's a little bit of a difference. And what happens? How many guys are night people? Right? The guys are learning till late, so then when they come home, they want to sit and talk. You know, she's exhausted. She's got to go to work tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Or 8:30, she's got to leave the house. Or even 8 o'clock. But, you know, he just came home from the yeshiva. He wants to talk. So she's a night person, she's a day person. Or how many guys are like neat freaks? You know, I know somebody, he's such a neat freak, he cleans out the toaster with a toothpick. There shouldn't be any crumbs afterwards. Her house is a holy wreck. Why? Because her mother, when she was growing up, just said, just close the door. I don't care what your room looks like. Just close the door so nobody can see it. I'm telling you, one of the ways for shalom bayis is to make sure that your home is neat. Nobody wants to come home to a sloppy home. You know, as a moil, all of you know that I'm a moil. So sometimes, not sometimes, I go back to visit the baby the next day. So sometimes when the bris is in Shul, right here, or any other place, you have no idea what the house looks like, right? So sometimes I come into the house the next day, a churban you can't believe. So the mother will say, excuse me, Rabbi Krohn, I just had a baby, and I want to tell her, man, you couldn't have piled this stuff up in 6 months. What are you talking about? Who wants to live with anybody like that? But when you go out, you just want to know, you know, did the grandmother wear a snood? Or did she wear a shaitel? Nobody asks if she's neat. What kind of question is that? But that's a difference in marriage. That's what's going to make a difference. Not whether the Zayda wore a streimel, you know, in Poland. Or he learned the Slobodka. That's not what's going to make a good marriage. We have to understand the real questions of what marriage is all about. You know, when Rabbi Paysach used to give a bracha to a chassan, he used to tell everyone the same medrash. Just like no two faces are alike, no two mindsets are alike. Every person has a different mindset. He used to say every boy, every man is different, every woman is different, and men and women surely are different. No two men think alike, no two women think alike, men and women surely don't think alike. So we don't need that book, men are from Yerushalayim or women are from Bnei Brak, if you know what I mean. Right? Because Chazal are teaching it to us. It's a different mindset. So I want to tell you something. You know, it used to bother me very much until I spoke to another marriage counselor. This guy's talking my closest friend, Yaakov Solomon. He once explained something to me that was frightening to me. Because I always wondered, you know, many times you hear a young couple got married, and after 4 or 5 months already, they're by the Rav, they're by the psychologist, they're by the therapist. We're not talking chas v'shalom where there was illness and nobody told, and there was, you know, there were hidden secrets that nobody revealed. We're not talking about that. Normal people. What in the world is going on after 4 or 5 months of marriage? And he explained it to me. He said, you know what happens? This boy came from a terrible marriage where his mother nagged the daylights out of his father. But they stayed together. And now this young Bible is beginning to nag him for whatever reason. And he thinks, I'm out of here. I am not going through 40 years like my father went through with my mother. And sometimes it's just the opposite. Sometimes you have a father who's very abusive in the house. My wife and I, we used to live in a house. My wife is from Denver, so of course we couldn't get an apartment there. You know, we could never go shopping together because until she came to get married, she was hardly in New York. So we rented someplace, in a basement, for a few months. That guy, where we lived, he davened in my shul. I never knew that he could speak. He was so quiet in shul. When he had an aliyah, you had to hear what he said. Hashem Yerachem, what went on in his house? Screaming, yelling. I couldn't believe it. So what happens? A guy marries a girl, and he starts yelling at her. And this girl grew up in such a marriage. She says, I'm not going through that. No, I'm not going through what my mother went through 40 years, yelling and screaming, where everybody thought he was a tzaddik in the shul, in the workplace, but at home he was a holy terror. You know what the most important thing for your children is? That you should have a good marriage. When you have a good marriage, it shows your kids that marriage is a safe place to be. Make no mistake about it. And I know there are people here that are divorced. And I know we all know there are people where there had to be a divorce. But don't make any mistake about it. The kids are karbonis. The most important thing you can do for your children is learn how to have a good marriage. Become a happy person. Read books about marriage. Listen to shiurim, heilige shiurim about marriage. Because that's how your kids are going to have a good marriage. Because they're going to realize what marriage is all about. And I think it's a big nourish cake for parents not to argue in front of their kids. I'm not talking, chas v'shalom, we're going to talk about how to argue in a minute. You're allowed to have differences. It's a false cake to make it sound as if the husband and wife always get along. There are differences. She wants to go to Wilkes-Barre for vacation. I want to go to Denver for vacation. There's different things. Some want to spend money on furniture. The other doesn't want to spend money on the furniture. That's normal. Kids have to understand that there are differences. That's the Ezer, that's connector. You have to teach a child. That's Ezer and connector. But if you make this fallacy that they always get along, chas v'shalom, as soon as there's any argument, all of a sudden the kids are frightened. Now I realize we have to daven marriage soon, so I want to get to the most important things. Rav Matisyahu Roberts, who is the Mashgiach in Shara Torah, he teaches a chassan class. And he says something very interesting. He tells all the boys, in every marriage there has to be 4 A's. Admiration, attention, appreciation, and affection. And I want to say something. I'm not in Williamsburg, so I can say it, although I'm sure that the tape will get to Williamsburg. There's nothing wrong in a child seeing that a husband says something nice and kind and sweet to a wife. Obviously, there's a degree, there's a level that a person has to be with tznius. But what's wrong with a husband giving a compliment to a wife in front of the children? And the same thing also. The wife saying thank you and giving a compliment to a husband in front of the children. That's how they learn what marriage is all about. I'll never forget that in our neighborhood there was a boy who wanted to go out of town after 8th grade. So he wanted to go. The question was whether to go out of town and whether he should stay in town or not. So the father asked the Rebbe, Rabbi Halvin, Rabbi Yitzchak Halvin, to go to Rabbi Yankov to ask Rabbi Yankov what the boy should do. You would never believe what Rabbi Yankov's first question was, whether this boy should go out of town. You know what his first question was? Do the parents have shalom bayis? So Rabbi Halvin said, yeah, of course. He said, good, then he should stay home. He said, why should he stay home? What's it got to do with that? No, because that's how he's going to learn what a marriage is all about. After high school, he'll go out of town. A boy belongs in town by his parents so he can see what marriage is all about. I could not believe Rabbi Yaakov said that. So I'm very close to Rabbi Shmuel Kamenetsky because my father was his shadchan. My parents were his shadchan because they were roommates in Israel. So I once asked Rabbi Shmuel, I said, that's what your father holds? That boys should not go out of town? He said, yeah, that's what he held. I said, Rabbi Shmuel, I hope you don't mind my asking, why did you start Philadelphia Yeshiva? He said, it's not for everybody. He said there are a lot of boys that don't live in New York, they live out of town, there's no high schools out of town, so that's what Philadelphia is for. And he said certain boys, they belong home. It's not for everybody. Could you imagine that? A child, how should a child see what marriage is all about if he doesn't learn when he's mature? He can't learn it when he's 8. When he's 14 and 15, and he's mature, and he sees how his parents get along, that's what a child learns. When he's 17, 18, he'll go out of town. And today, especially in New York, Baruch Hashem, there's so many great yeshivas here where a kid can come home every Shabbos or every night. Whatever the parent will work out. But a child belongs at home. How's he supposed to learn what marriage is all about? One of the most important things is to say thank you. When was the last time a husband thanked a wife for the meal that she made? When was the last time that a wife thanked a husband for the money that he brought home? I always say that a woman who wants to be thanked for the challah that she made has to thank her husband for the dough that he brings home.